Hey everyone, it's Yvonne Wakefield. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and podcast where I read from Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time. The first book in this series of 3 about this log cabin I built when I was 18, where I still have and I continue to go back to. Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait takes off from the first book, and Babe in the Woods Path to Totality takes you up to today. So I read 18 last time, where I talk about going to the gynecologist. One second, we gotta take a break here. Come here, Henry. Come here, Henry. Come here. Henry's my little, I think he's 13 years old now. Come here, buddy. Come on. He's like totally deaf. He can still see, but he's got to find me in different ways now since he can't hear. Okay, buddy, you sit right here. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so chapter 18, I made a brush pile. I almost burned myself up. I went to the gynecologist. I was learning to use tools. It was crummy, rainy outside, and the weather in the mountains is like that. I went last week in May, and 2 weeks before it had been sunny with the wildflowers coming out. And when I woke up this last week, there were 2 inches of new snow. So it's mountain weather. So this chapter is a short chapter, and it's called If the Tool Fits. Remember Brad, the guy who was helping me, he left to go be with his girlfriend for a while, and I wasn't sure he was coming back. So now I'm just working by myself or with Jim. Since Brad's departure, I appreciate working with Jim even more than before. Unlike Brad, Jim does not show impatience at my ineptitude, nor does he ever console even when I totally screw up or smash a body part to the bone. With the seal log set, joist mortised in, and studs hammered tight, we continue work on raising the walls one log at a time, without a solid floor to balance upon or to break a fall. Further testing my nascent building skills is learning that tools that work for men don't always work for women. Most commercial tools are made with men in mind. I will spend a lifetime working around this. The fastest way to get a log to the building site is to PV it loose from the stack, give it a kick, and send it rolling, where 9 times out of 10, it comes to a clinking halt against the posts. When it misses its mark, we have to drag it back to the site, as there is no stopping without the promise of sure death, a runaway log on a downhill course. Each log must be hoisted onto the foundation. This involves a balancing act in thin air, dangerous in any circumstance, even with the support of a floor. Jim steadies it as I climb up and drape myself over the butt of a log, cantilevering it until he climbs up. Ready? Jim slowly swings his end of the log until it's supported kitty corner, forming a triangle of space. Until then, I'm dangling in midair. With the log secured, I get a foothold, and together we roll the log parallel, sight it for bow and taper. The first 2 rounds, we had placed the log's butt end. Then we decided to switch to saddle notching. This more time-consuming method, Jim assures me, will make the logs fit more closely. Without Brad's muscle, this work is slow. As the walls rise, I squeeze the life out of the log between my legs to avoid toppling off and hold my breath, leveraging sharp tools so high. When the walls are low, the saw can be started on the ground and carried up whirling. As the walls grow in height, the saw is started on the ground and pulled up on a rope. It is just too dangerous to do it any other way. Jim uses a broad axe for notching. I use my smaller pole axe to whack out wedges on the log end opposite him. Still, the long handle contorts my waist, shoulders, and elbows into palsied angles. By the time Jim finishes axing out his marks, refining the groove, chiseling his notch smooth, I'm still spastically whacking away. He busies himself selecting the next log while I fume over my hack job. Finally, my notch is finished, not as curvilinear and smooth as Jim's, but satisfactory in appearance, at least to me. When we roll the log over, Jim's notch fits as tight as the O-ring on a successful rocket launch. Mission accomplished. On his first try, I explode with anger the first and second time, but have a meltdown the third time. I must rework my notch. Each time the log must be rolled over, dog down, and readjusted to fit. God damn it to hell, I yell, and I throw the poleaxe to the ground after the fourth try, knowing full well Jim is more upset by my mistreatment of a tool than my profanity. I clamber down, kick the dirt between the posts and piers, and curse the day I set out to do what I thought I could. Dirt flies and the earth kicks back, knocking me to my knees, one of which finds a sharp rock. I curl in a fetal position, clutching it. Jim does not come to my aid. He has, though, clambered down the log, stayed within safe distance as I roll around, cursing to keep from crying, so pissed off, even a concussed patella cannot keep me down. I hobble upright, brush off my impaled knee, and throw off my shirt. Bare-breasted, I am Liberty, leading a charge to finish off this damn notch. I pick up my hatchet, hold it over my head, and scale the first tier. Straddling that log, I whack away. In the space of the first chop or two, I discovered the tool fit me. What the hatchet lacked in weight and length offered me dexterity and accuracy. Ready? I yell, and Jim climbs up to roll over the log. My notch does not fit tight as an O-ring, but it fits with my scale at that time. As the walls rise, my notching skills improve, and when there's a setback, I take to swearing. Thursdays are the day I pay Jim for the week, and I'm calculating the hours he's worked that morning around the campfire when I hear his truck drive up past my camp and park at the site, a routine that's been going on since the road dried enough to drive on. Most days, Jim works 8 hours. Even at $16 a day, I have to budget his bargain, and when possible, I pay extra for his gas money. This Thursday, I can spare an extra $20 since Brad's been gone. Grocery costs are way down. I walk up to the building site, check my back pocket, a Taster's Choice shake in a mason jar, and an apple and a Tillamook chunk of cheese and Triscuit. Prepared to see only Jim, I blink when I see another man standing beside him. Back to me, hands on hip, surveying the rising walls. No mistaking Brad's silhouette. I walk up to him and shake his hand. Although I want to hug him for returning to help me, in the back of my mind, I'm multiplying the cost of extra groceries. Knowing Jim's schedule, Brad, still in hitchhiking mode, had slept at the highway and the county road junction, planning to catch a ride with him in the morning. Jim and I fill Brad in on how we've gotten the walls this high. Brad doesn't mention Jacqueline, and his return will render my cantileering position obsolete. As if we've never lost the beat of working together, we reestablish a routine. The men heft and position each log with seemingly relative ease compared to the trapeze act Jim and I relied on. The three of us work 2 logs at a time. While I'm cutting a notch, Jim will work the opposite end of the log Brad is working on. When he finishes, it will work, and the other end of my log is finished in perfect sections, unlike my first. Progress is steady. Since I've gotten a handle on tools that work for me, I feel more comfortable in my work. The walls rise, and the three of us synchronize a progressive pattern. Though there is less friendly banter than before, Brad is much quieter since he hitchhiked back from the love of his life, and at the end of the workday, he goes straight to his camp. In the evening, when I walk up to secure the building site, I can see him through the trees, crouched on the fire, writing in a notebook. Each morning, he hands Jim a thick letter to mail. I know it's not addressed to his mother because she more or less disowned him after an incident that involved a face slapping after he told her to eat a hair pie, her own. The weather is cooperative. Each day brings sun, and by afternoon, we sweat streams, work without shirts, sometimes even without shorts. Sensations of stinging sweat in our eyes loses its marvel after the first 2 days, and like Jim, I tie a bandana around my forehead. After working one of those 100-degree days, I hike down the mountain to buy eggs from Rhonda. When I crawl under some barbed wire fencing, I have to rest before getting up because I'm dizzy. And I haven't been able to stand up really straight under the scorching sun in a couple of days. I tell Rhonda about this, but not the part about working half naked. She sends me back up the mountain with sodium pills in a brown glass bottle. Take a few every day, she says, and I pay her for 35 cents for a dozen eggs. The second week of July is opposite to the first week when I shivered to the bone working in soaking rain. There's not a cloud to shade our baked heads, and by noon it's already 90 degrees. At lunch break, if we are still dressed, we strip off our clothes and plunge into the creek, sit on the bank, dry in the sun, and eat. At one such lunch, I'm sharing some eggs I'd hard-boiled and offering a side of sodium tablets too, when Frank Miller unexpectedly enters this le jour afternoon. We all manage to pull something on before he crashes our scene, his slobbering hound sounding the advance. Remember, Frank Miller was that guy who offered to give me building materials for cheaper if I agreed to meet him at his cabin. Howdy, Frank says, standing over us as his dog noses the cheese. Introductions don't need to be made. We've all done business with him before. Jim and Brad quickly gobble the lunch and then get back to work. Frank stays around as I screw on the peanut butter jar lid and insists I show him around, especially the land across the creek. May want to buy some of them trees off of you, he says. I have no intention of cutting any trees to sell, but oblige. After stowing the peanut butter, I pull a long-sleeved shirt over my halter top as a precaution against ticks and pests. We ford the creek and scale the south slope and sit on a serpentine pine-needly perch surrounded by ponderosa pines straight as arrow shafts. The dog runs uphill following elk scent, judging by the scat I've seen on the climb. Sweating, I take off my flannel shirt and tie it around my waist. Frank squints up at the trees. His eyes then gaze at me as if they were fingers over my back. I fold my arms around my knees. You know, we could still make a trade. Frank reaches to touch me and I scoot back. The only way I'd sell you some of these trees if they were selectively horse-logged. I don't want this hillside cut up by a cat. Frank doesn't give a rip about the ecological fragility of this arid mountainside. My leading him here has been his ruse. How much you want? Frank's not talking about bored feet because he pulls the halter top strings and pushes on top of me, leaving enough space for me to rise a knee. I roll out from underneath him and side jump down the incline, alternating directions to avoid an overhead tumble, the way Jim taught me. I ford the creek in one stride. At the building site, Jim and Brad continue where they were before, lunch. I get back to work without a word. Why is there dirt on your back? Asks Brad. Fell down is all I say. Frank Miller and his dog must have taken the abandoned log skid back down the mountain because we don't see them again. At the end of the day, when Jim is packing up his tools, I say, we're done doing business with Miller. He meets my eyes. There's no discussion otherwise. Since Del Tayton said he didn't deliver, I've been inquiring about hiring, even buying a truck big enough to haul the floorboards and come up short on both accounts. Therefore, it's a welcome surprise one afternoon when Jim yells, "Get your shirt on, we've got company." My shirt is on the ground 10 feet below where I sit notching a wall log. It's impossible to scramble down to get it before whoever drove up in the truck gets up there. Here, catch. Brad unties the shirt around his waist, tosses it on a log beneath me. I snatch it in midair and pull it on. Fully buttoned, it fit me like a dress, the neck opening to a revealing V. After all this flurry, Dale Tayton stands below the cabin looking up at me. Where you want your boards unloaded, he asks. I'm flabbergasted by this grumpy Sawyer's unexpected kindness and climb down to greet him. He stares at the shirt hanging below my knees. His tires are too bald for traction needed to scale the steep slope, so he has parked just below the building site where we unload. Jim and Brad help clear the flatbed board by board, the four of us working as a team to create two 12-foot-long piles. Afterwards, I tour Dale around the building site, explaining the various steps in building, which of course he already knows. That your Echo? Remember Echo's the chainsaw I bought for me? That your Echo? Dale points to a smaller saw beside Jim's monstrous steel. Yep, I answer proudly. Be careful with that, kid. Dale removes his cruddy cap, rubs a familiar plum-colored scar on his forehead. Be real careful. Before I write out a check to pay for the lumber he said he would not deliver, I ask, how much do you want for gas? Nothing, Yvonne, he says, and I'm surprised he's using this name that originated around his kitchen table. I hand Dale a check for $51.52, watch him drive down the road, then take off Brad's shirt, happy to get back to work. Compared to notching, laying the floorboard is nearly effortless, requiring only hand sawing and nailing, finished board squeezed tight with a clamp bar. By the end of the next day, the entire main floor is laid. After Jim is gone, Brad and I dance barefoot on the pristine, clean planks, and it starts to rain. Brad slips, somehow impales his groin, rolls on the virgin floor, groaning, fucking goddamn cock-sucking motherfucking son of a bitch, he screams, his thighs clamped vice-like around his fists. That's where I learned how to swear. It's from Brad. As Jim did when I impaled my knee, I stand silently watching, but finally ask, is there anything I can do? Fuck, he groans. I take this as a no. When Brad is able to stand, I walk with him to his camp, tell him to go into his tent, change into dry clothes, and stay inside until I have a fire going. After I boiled water and banked the fire, I place a mug of chamomile tea next to the curled outline of his sleeping bag. Anything you need? I ask, kneeling by the flap. Ugh, fuck, he huffs. I take this as a no. Women mother. Men, suck it up. Okay, well, that was chapter 19. Next week, we're going to have chapter 20, Tears in a Bucket. Thank you for listening. Remember, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Tell all your friends and family. Listen to the podcast. And we will see you next week. And it's getting warm out there. Stay hydrated. Bye-bye.